In 1983, Chris and I had our son Nick, and in 1985, we had our daughter Melissa. Both seemed like healthy newborns. Our kids got colds and ear infections just like all kids do, but they always seem to require antibiotics to get over the hump to get them better. Around 3, Melissa always had just a little cough. The doctors told us she has allergies, she has asthma. By the time Melissa was in middle school, she coughed all the time, especially at night. I was sure that our house was making her sick. We tore up the carpeting, opted for hardwood floors, and replaced the old windows. While this was healthier for them, it did not stop her from coughing. By the time they were teenagers, I would lay awake at night and say to myself, something's wrong. We need to find out what's going on. After seeing several doctors, we ended up at a pulmonologist's office with Nick. They took his first chest x-ray and referred us to Stanford Clinic. This was the first time I'd heard the word cystic fibrosis. On January 19th, 2000, we headed up to Stanford. This was a day I'll never forget. If you can imagine waiting in a small room and having the doctor come in and give you the worst possible news. Your child has an incurable disease. I felt really hot as the blood drained through my body. I thought I was going to pass out. The rest of the day was a blur. We spent the next several hours in a crash course on what the disease was and how to treat it. As we were learning about CF, I looked at the nurse and I told her, my daughter has this disease. She's the one with all the symptoms. 1 month later, on February 22nd, 2000, we were back up at Stanford with the same diagnosis for Melissa. For months, every night while cooking dinner, I cried, how are we going to get through this? People always say, I don't know how you do it. Well, the answer is, you do it because you don't have a choice. The next 3 years, we went to Stanford every 3 months, and the kids remained stable. In 2002, Nick went off to USC for college, and we had our first reality check and the financial burdens CF places on a family. Nick needed a single dorm room with a sink in order to do his twice daily treatment and keep his lungs clear, and a sink to sterilize his equipment. This was the most expensive room on campus, one of the first hidden expenses. The following year, Melissa followed Nick to USC, and we repeated the process. During college, the disease started to progress. Melissa started having hospital admissions about every 4 months, followed by home IVs in her dorm room. Chris and I made many unscheduled trips to LA during the hospital stays. I would use Priceline to find the cheapest hotels. Sometimes we change hotels every night just to stay in one that was inexpensive. Plus, we were missing time from work. This was the beginning of us seeing the hidden expenses associated with CF and why we started our foundation to help others experiencing the same situation. A few years after our kids graduated from college and the disease progressed even more, getting to the point where both our kids had to go on disability. Their new job was to maintain their health, which requires several hours a day of treatments and hospital stays every 3 or 4 months. Now they live on a very limited income, $950 a month. As parents, we feel compelled to help our children afford the daily costs of living expenses, another hidden cost of CF. We've had so many hospital stays with our kids over the years, I have lost track of the number. Your life comes to a complete stop during these times. You take off work without pay to care for them. In 2015, what we thought was going to be a routine hospital stay became our worst nightmare. We took Melissa to Stanford on a Monday. On Wednesday, they told us that she needed a transplant. By Sunday night, on Sunday night, they placed her on life support because her lungs had failed her. 23 days in the ICU, she was lucky enough to receive a double lung transplant. For 6 months, we stopped working to be by our daughter's side. At this time, we had no income. We were forced to live in one of the most expensive housing markets in the area while continuing to maintain our expenses at home. Without the aid of our community through a GoFundMe and the aid we received that year from the Living Breath Foundation, we would have been financially crippled. This past spring, Melissa was hospitalized again for 6 weeks. Following her stay, we had a week at home. Before we were all back sleeping at Stanford when Nick was hospitalized due to a massive lung bleed, which can be life-threatening. We once again made it through these traumatic situations. How? You do it because you have no choice. The emotional stress this disease puts on a family is incredible. We all suffer from anxiety and PTSD from the constant stress CF puts on our lives. This brings us back to why we started the foundation. We did it to help other families like ours with the financial burdens of the disease. If we can take some of the financial stress away, we hope people with CF lives will be a little easier.